This conference will now be recorded.
Through the chair to Councilman Kelly, I asked Engineer DeFranco to come on board in anticipation of this particular question. My layman's answer is that if we are going to be installing additional stormwater infrastructure, we're going to be changing the hydrology and the layout of that land, such that we'll be able to achieve recreational uses on some of that acreage. Engineer DeFranco can get more into the technical details of how we're able to achieve stormwater management and recreation uses on the Spruce property.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. Yeah, I could speak to the stormwater management. This is a good site because a large tributary area runs along or through the site. There is Windsor Ditch, which starts at the west end of the city and at the Bretton Ridge developments, and then heads east all the way to the golf course. It runs right along the north edge of the Spruce property. So, something could be done where during heavy rains, that water could be diverted to storage on the Spruce property. There's also a ditch that carries runoff from the south side of I-480, the Cypress, Magnolia, Spruce subdivision. So similarly, any of that runoff could also be diverted to storage on the Spruce property. And that would primarily benefit residents downstream, which would be the Park Ridge area and the Burns Decker area.
And Mr. DeFranco, I am correct in assuming that that 12 acres, we could achieve stormwater management infrastructure and new recreation assets over a 12-acre plot of land, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, just to add, the city has a history of adding stormwater retention areas wherever we can. So, for example, at Clegg Park, there's underwater storm retention basins there, and obviously the field is on top of that as well.
So there's two options there of either underground or partitioning. Mr. Kelly, did that address your question?
Sort of. Thank you.
Okay. Really quick, just checking with the clerk. I noticed that the recording came on as we were talking. Did we miss the beginning of the meeting?
We did, unfortunately.
Mr. Garreau, do I need to do kind of a quick recap here to make sure that we cover the intro?
No, I think that, I mean, if you want to do it for the benefit of anybody who joined, although I'm looking at the people that are present here, and it's the same people who have been here the entire time. As long as your minutes reflect what, your report reflects what took place, in those first few minutes, if you want to briefly note that in your committee report, that's fine. I mean, the minutes of a meeting, they just need to reflect what occurred. They don't have to be verbatim or anything like that. So we're okay.
Yeah, all right, I will make them more detailed than usual, just for fairness. I see Mr. Zabo might need me to recollection here.
I think Mr. Zabo's been here the whole time.
So. Oh, okay. The other note, just for clarification, as if we're looking to build residential, typically the portion of building or extending a street, is that usually part of the conversation with the developer, or does that burden fall on the city, or how does that historically? I know we don't have a lot of recent events on that, but how does that typically play out?
Any residential development that I've been a part of, the developer puts in the street. He puts in the street to the specifications of the city engineer. When the city engineer okays the street that okays the development the streets meet his specifications, it is then dedicated. The city at no point in time pays for the installation of the roads that are to accommodate the development. That's with any of the residential developments that I've done throughout my career.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Sorry, I actually don't have a question. I'd just like to make a comment. So we get the Sun Herald here at my house, and right on the front page, the Sun Herald says that this is already a done deal, that the city has purchased this property. This comes on the heels of telling 15 people that they're eventually not going to have a job. It's just the perception doesn't look good when this hasn't been voted on yet, and comes off of what has been rather well attended meetings. So that's simply my comment. It didn't look good today.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the councilman, I've not seen that article yet. I was made aware that that was the headline. So I've not seen what the content of the article said. You're right, council, we're bringing this to council for your consideration. Obviously, we, brought this to you, and you've had committee meetings on this. In no way did my administration represent to any reporter at any time that you've completed your discussion and that a vote had been taken yet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Heeman, did you still have a comment or question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I stated in your previous committee meeting, these properties are in the heart of a residential neighborhood, and letting someone else acquire them would be at a great detriment to our city, I believe. And while, the timing of those committee meetings previous that Mr. Kelly is mentioning, those could have moved quicker, but they did not. This has been around for a little bit longer than just since yesterday, Mr. Kelly. And I think that we really need to consider that the residents in those neighborhoods need to be able to know that securely we are guaranteeing them their property values will stay high and that they will increase by the projects that we will bring forward, rather than risking an outside source and then, what do they want? And then we have to deal with that as well. So I think we are the best source of a purchase that could ever be had. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council or the administration? Just one last point that I'd like to make on the assessment is that the document provided, and I think there was a note in there, but those annual figures are only taken out through 5 years. Is that correct, Mr. Upson?
Mr. Chairman, are you talking about what sums down to the total aggregate benefit, or the aggregate?
Yes.
So what sums down to that total aggregate benefit line is just 1 year of those revenues. And then the asterisk line is if you carry those revenues constant over a decade, that's how you arrive at that $683,000 in new revenue to the city.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions from committee or council, I would first just quickly like to restate who was in attendance since it didn't get recorded. All committee, Mr. Glassburn recused himself, and the rest of council was present. The mayor, finance director, law director, economic development director, the service director joined, city engineer, the superintendent of Northland City Schools was a guest, and other guests were also in attendance. And at this time, I would like to make a motion to recommend ordinance 2022-6062 and ask for a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 2-0. And at this time, I will conclude the Finance Committee at 8:03 p.m. Oh, excuse me.
This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Just quickly, I don't know, Mr. Law Director, I don't know if I need to reopen it, but just there was a executive session set up, and just wanted to confirm whether that was still needed.
Mr. Chairman, the executive session is set for is on the agenda for the council meeting. I would see if a motion is made to adjourn to executive session. It's on there, but if no motion is made, or if a motion is made and not seconded, it's not going to occur. So I think you can just leave it on the agenda, and if somebody feels the need to adjourn to executive session, a motion can be made and seconded, and we can gauge it that way.
Okay,
I don't think you have to remove it from the agenda. If nobody makes the motion, then it doesn't happen.
Okay.
Somebody wants to do it, then they can make the motion.
Mr. Broussard, did you have a comment?
Well, I was about to ask the law director if I need to ask for anyone to make a motion, but then he just clearly said that I don't have to, so I'm good.
Yeah, if anybody on the council wishes to make a motion to adjourn, feels the need to adjourn to executive session, by all means, feel free to make the motion after the roll call. No motions made, then proceed with your agenda.
Okay, thank you. And I will conclude again at 8:05 p.m. Thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.
The special council meeting of July 7th, 2022 will now please come to order. Just a note for those of you who wish to address council tonight via this virtual format, council is asking that you please use the chat feature now to let Clerk Taylor know that you have a comment, and you will be called on during the comment portion of the meeting. If you are calling on a phone or you do not have access to the chat feature, we will give directions during the public comment portion of our meeting to provide you with the opportunity to speak. That said, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Broussard.
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Here.
Mr. Glassburn.
Here.
Ms. Heeman.
Here. Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Limpert.
Present.
Mr. Scarrow.
Here.
Ms. Williamson.
Here.
Thank you. I don't believe there's going to be a motion for executive session, but if anyone is going to make that motion, please make that now. I'll proceed in 5 seconds. Great. Moving into council committee reports, Councilman Limpert, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, do you have a report this evening? Dwayne, I think you're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a report this evening. The Finance Committee met on the 5th of July at 7:15 p.m. Present were committee members Limpert and Williamson. Mr. Glassburn recused himself. Also, the rest of the council was present, as well as the mayor, law director, finance director, economic development director, and guests that were in attendance were the superintendent of North City Schools and the Board of Education president. on the agenda was ordinance 2022-62, school property purchase, which was an ordinance authorizing the mayor to negotiate and enter an agreement with North Olmsted Board of Education to purchase school district owned real property for Forest and Spruce for consideration of $4 million. After discussion from the administration on the benefits, most specifically were the right of first refusal, the obvious land value, the potential for projects ranging from residential, wastewater management, or excuse me, stormwater management, and recreation as potential uses, as well as just removing potential blight and risk of a closed school. The ordinance was held in committee by a vote of 2-0, and the meeting concluded at 7:47 p.m. The next finance also met this evening at 7:45 p.m. on 7 July. Virtually present were committee members Limpert and Williamson. Councilman Glassburn recused himself, and the rest of council, the mayor, the law director, the finance director, the the service director, safety director, economic development director, and city engineer were present also. As a guest, the superintendent of schools was present. We continued the discussion referencing the financial benefits document provided by the administration with some additional questions on feasibility and availability of the use of spruce for the different uses, whether that be retention or recreation. And I'm trying to figure out how to turn on my camera, Mr. President. I must have lost it. And after discussion, the motion passed to recommend by a vote of 2-0, and the committee meeting ended at 8:05 p.m. This concludes my report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. And we know what you look like. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll now move into audience participation. Thank you for joining tonight's special council meeting. Public comment offers the opportunity for members of the public to share information and bring issues and concerns to the attention of city council members. It is not a debate, and public comment speakers should not expect a back and forth exchange. Council members may ask clarifying questions of the speaker, city staff, or fellow council members. Those attending city council meetings should show the same respect to others that they wish to have shown to them. For those of you wishing to speak tonight, please state and spell your name and address for the clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 3 minutes. We will start with those who have notified us via chat. Once recognized by the clerk, please unmute your phone or computer and begin your comment. Clerk Taylor, has anyone notified you that they would like to comment?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, we'll wait a few seconds here, see if anybody else chimes in. Okay, seeing no comments from the audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading, Resolution 2022-61, a resolution introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids to award a contract for construction services at the wastewater treatment plant, WWTP, and as detailed in the specifications on file with the engineer, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to contract for the same with the lowest and best bidder as amended.
Mr. President,
Councilman.
I move for adoption of Resolution 2022-61 and ask for a second.
Second.
Thank you. Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-61 made by Councilman Scarl and seconded by Councilwoman Gilchrist. Roll call, please.
Mr. Scarl.
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 2022-61 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Legislation on second reading, ordinance 2022-62, an ordinance introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the mayor to negotiate and enter into an agreement with the North Olmsted Board of Education to purchase school district-owned real property commonly known as Forest Elementary School and Spruce Elementary School in consideration of $4 million. Legislation on first reading, Resolution 2022-63, a resolution dispensing with the RFP process and authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with CHN Housing Partners for the purpose of administering ARPA funding for home repairs and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving into scheduling committee meetings for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Councilman Glassburn, would you like to schedule finance?
Is it my understanding that 7:30 would be 15 minutes prior to caucus for that evening? Okay, then I'd like to schedule finance at 7:30 on August 2nd to consider the matter on first reading this evening. And
Great.
invite the mayor to designate Mr. Upton or whoever else she sees fit.
Thank you. Lastly, just as a reminder, the special council meeting of July 11th, 2022 will be held at 6 p.m. via GoToMeeting. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, the special council meeting of July 7th, 2022 is adjourned at 8:15 p.m. Good night, everybody.